Okay, good day to you all. My name is Julio Leido, and I will be presenting a report on nuclear energy. So what we will be discussing for today would be Philippines' energy situation, which includes the country's energy mix and some of the already made policies and projects that are related to energy. And then we have nuclear energy, which includes advantages and its disadvantages. How the Philippine government views nuclear energy, as well as I will be mentioning some countries that are uh, using nuclear energy and some countries that are opposed to the use of nuclear energy. So we also have application of lessons, which is in light of the course Energy and Society. And then we have the conclusion, which answers the question whether or not should the Philippines allow the inclusion of nuclear energy into its energy mix. So starting off with the Malampaya gas field. The Philippines is facing an impending energy shortage as the Malampaya gas fields, which supply 30% of Luzon's energy consumption, are expected to run dry by 2024. With an ever-increasing population, an infrastructure boom mandated by the administration, and some of the highest electricity costs ever, the Philippines is in impending doom situation. So what is in the current energy mix of the country? So the current energy mix is composed of coal, which is 47%, natural gas, which is 22%, renewable energy, which includes hydro, geothermal, wind, and solar, which is 24%, and oil-based, which is 6.2%. So some of the energy policies already created in the Philippines, these were discussed in the course. We have Republic Act 9136, or the Electric Power Industry Reform Act of 2001, which is made to ensure and accelerate the total electrification of the country and to ensure the quality, reliability, security, and affordability of the supply of electric power. We also have Republic Act 9513, which is the Renewable Energy Act of 2008, which was codified in December 2008 to affirm the government's commitment to accelerate the utilization of renewable energy resources within the country. So now we have the best part, which is nuclear energy. So what are its advantages and disadvantages? Starting off with its pros, we have carbon-free electricity, which means nuclear energy plants do not produce carbon dioxide or any air pollution during operation, while the traditional fossil fuel generation sources emit massive amounts of CO2 into the atmosphere, which is the primary cause of global climate change. Small land footprint. Nuclear energy plants take up far less physical space compared to other common clean energy facilities like facilities for wind and solar power. We have high power output. So nuclear power plants produce high levels of energy compared to most power sources, especially renewables. Reliable energy source. Nuclear power plants produce at full capacity 93% of the time, more than any other energy source, and it is a dependable renewable energy source due to its consistent production and accessibility. But when it comes to advantages, there are also its disadvantages. So uranium is technically non-renewable. Although nuclear energy is recognized as clean source of energy, it is not technically renewable. Current nuclear technology uses uranium ore as fuel, which is found in, I guess, limited quantities in the Earth's crust. So it is a little bit difficult to sustain. So very high upfront costs. It is very expensive to build it in the first place. Nuclear reactors are complex devices that necessitate numerous levels of safety to be built around them, raising the cost of new nuclear plants. Nuclear waste. Nuclear waste is considered radioactive, which is bad for human consumption, making it a potential environmental and health disaster. These are the very reasons why our governments spend massive amounts of money to safely package and dispose of spent nuclear fuel. And lastly, we have malfunctions can be very catastrophic. Hot radioactive vapors can escape, which can cause nuclear plants uh, to fully melt down and combust, while also releasing harmful radioactive materials into the environment. So former Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte is said to have approved an executive order to include nuclear power as an option in the country's energy mix as it phased out coal-fired power plants to meet climate goals. And according to NHK World Japan, coal-fired power plants currently meet roughly 60% of the Philippines' total energy needs. To address power outages and high electricity prices, the country intends to use nuclear power. So in light of energy and society, we have here a summary of nuclear power program, which is an energy planning study. So natural gas and renewables as clean energy compete with each other. Thus, the need for other low carbon technologies to lower coal shares in the power mix. Nuclear power significantly mitigates greenhouse gas emission and is complementary to natural gas and renewables. Entry of nuclear power is feasible but can be delayed depending on the level of electricity demand and investment cost. So, if we base nuclear energy with this, which is the energy trilemma, we have energy security, energy equity, and environmental sustainability. If you read each of these measures and covers, I ask you, do you think nuclear energy or nuclear power is worth it for the country to acquire or to include in the energy mix? So in conclusion, my answer is no. My answer is no because despite all of its advantages and pros, in my perspective, the risks are not worth it to include it in the energy mix. As we mentioned in the cons, initial construction costs are high. A new nuclear plant can take 5 to 10 years to build, which can clearly cost billions of dollars or billions of pesos. There is also the risk of an accident, radioactive waste, limited fuel supply, and a detrimental environmental impact. So overall, in my perspective, it's just too dangerous and not worth it to spend tons of money on. Of course, it has its advantages, but then again, it has very detrimental and adverse effects to the environment. So I repeat, my answer would be not to include nuclear energy in its energy mix, in the country's energy mix. So here are my references, and thank you for listening.